What's up, guys? Welcome back to Newswave. So it's been known that Phil Spencer likes to tease different announcements in his background on his different shelves, and yesterday was no different, as it looks like we may have caught a glimpse of a new Xbox console. We'll go over that here today. Also, we are going to be talking about some holiday sales that appear to have started a bit early in October, with Nintendo marking down some of their first-party games, and we're also going to be going over what looks like a big breakthrough in the retro modding community, this with the original Xbox. Guys, if you enjoy these videos, make sure you hit that like button, helps out a ton, and if you're new here to the SpawnWave channel, make sure you subscribe down below. And we're going to start today with Bing, Microsoft Edge, and Xbox game streaming, as it's been noticed that if you search for a game that's on Game Pass streaming in Bing using Microsoft Edge, you can just jump right into the game. We can see this posted up over on Windows Central, showing it with Gears 5 Game of the Year Edition. Little play button there with the Cloud logo next to it. And this is something that I believe Google had promised, and they had a laundry list of things they were going to try to do with Stadia, but I believe integrated with search was something they wanted to do, and they just never did. But here's Microsoft making it happen, so that's great. The only problem here, obviously, is you'd have to be using Bing to search for something with Microsoft Edge on purpose. And I know Bing, it's a search engine that's used. It's not nearly as popular as something like Google search. I am curious though, anyone out there using Bing, let me know in the comments, I guess, and let me know if this is something you noticed, because could have been like this for months and just one person decided to actually use Bing and Microsoft Edge, and oh look, you can jump into Game Pass games right away. Also, there was a lot of talk and frustration around the necessity of a phone number to play Overwatch 2 with Battle.net, so much so that Blizzard decided to backtrack a bit, and if you were a regular Overwatch 1 player, you didn't need that phone number to jump into Overwatch 2. Looks like that trend is going to be continuing with an Activision release coming up, that being the new Call of Duty game. We can see this posted up by The Verge, where they say Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2 will require players to register with a phone number on Battle.net to play the game in order to make players responsible for their actions. I know that back in the day, and well, still now, Call of Duty was a very, very toxic game when it came to communication in some of these different lobbies with voice chat. And I guess Activision, Blizzard, I'm sure they've fielded quite a few calls and issues with this in game, and they decided, you know what, you're going to tie a phone number to it. That way, there's a bit more of a consequence to this whole situation if we have to ban you for your conduct and everything. And I guess cheaters. Like on PC, that is something that consistently happens with a lot of games, and that's really what it comes down to, is Activision and Blizzard attempting to weed out cheaters and people just causing issues for others in games by saying, hey, if you get banned, well, you can't use that phone number again, and they're making it so you can't use a prepaid number, but also that makes some people just can't play the game if they're using a prepaid number. So I'm curious if this is something else that, well, in this case, Activision would backtrack on as we get closer to release, because it was a big, big controversy for Overwatch 2, but I guess we'll find out here in a couple of weeks when Modern Warfare 2 launches. Oh, and the Persona 25th anniversary that lasted quite a while has finally come to a close, and the final message we have here for the anniversary from the director and producer seems to allude to some big announcements still coming up. We can see this posted over on Push Square, citing Persona Central there, saying it is also with great sadness that we must bring an end to the everlasting momentum of Persona's 25th anniversary. There are so many things I would like to tell you, but I deeply apologize for not being able to do so on this occasion. I would like to share them with you at the right time, so please look forward to more information about the Persona series in the future. Unfortunately, there were a lot of reports saying that COVID really threw off their release schedule and development internally. So I would assume that some of the rumored projects right now are like Persona 3 getting a remake, but obviously Persona 6, we all know a Persona 6 is happening at some point, and it wouldn't surprise me if the big climax of this entire anniversary was to show that Persona 6 is in development, or who knows, maybe they were going to plan to have a full trailer and everything to show. I think that'll still happen in the next year or two. It's just probably just going to be delayed for a bit longer here. It would have been nice to have it line up with the end of the 25th anniversary, but we'll just have to wait a bit longer for that one. And guys, with some of the quick news out of the way, let's get into the bigger stuff. Let's start right away with Phil Spencer and apparently the shelves in his background, as he likes to keep a lot of stuff on there that seems to allude to releases and announcements that are upcoming. For example, he had the Kojima Productions statue on the back shelf, and oh look, there's Kojima making a game with Xbox. And in this case, we can see this image, this posted up on Twitter, where he's talking about Vault Boy and the Fallout 25 anniversary and congratulating Bethesda. And wait a minute, right at the top, there's what looks like a miniaturized Xbox Series S system. You can see the controller next to it for scale. It's just under that big sword at the top there, and to the left of some Elden Ring merchandise. The interesting stuff for that one. But the little system is obviously what caught everyone's eye. It has what it looks like the Xbox logo to the left of it, and then a USB port to the right. I would assume that Xbox logo is actually a button to power on the device, but this immediately went viral online because it appears there's just a unannounced Xbox console sitting on Phil Spencer's shelves, and immediately the wheels started turning online, and we came to the conclusion that this would be Xbox Keystone, which was the streaming device that originally was kind of talked about as a stick, then a puck, and then eventually a box. So it went through its own evolution in the press and media, and this is actually what's been described as the latest report, saying it was an Xbox Series X with like the top quarter of it cut off. Now, Microsoft had sort of mentioned this device in passing, and a spokesperson just said that they were still gonna keep it internal and it had been delayed, and they were basically going back to the drawing board for it. And there were a lot of speculation as to why, whether the OS still needed some refinement. Maybe they were still just working to get cloud streaming to a better place where you can stream 4K through it. You can't do that yet. So like things that would make the overall user experience better. And I'm really interested in this device because I think there's potential here if they approach it correctly, and most of that comes down to the price. If this is $100 or less, I think it's possible this could be a big seller. If it's $200 or more, I don't think it's going to do that well. And there's also other possibilities here because people are looking at this as that's it. It just streams Xbox Game Pass stuff. Well, there was talk that it could be a media box to go alongside of that, so it would load up your Netflix, Amazon Prime, HBO Max, Disney Plus, those sorts of things, but also play some games natively, which would mostly be, I assume, mobile games from, say, the Google Play Store, because we know that Microsoft is working to acquire Activision Blizzard, and part of that comes an entire mobile division. And to go a little further, I think this could be a pretty cool device at that $100 or less price point to essentially extend your Xbox Series X from one room to another using remote play. Like, let's say you have an Xbox Series X downstairs, you pick this up, you put it up in your bedroom, and you can just stream your Series X to the upstairs TV. I think that is another selling point for it, and maybe these are all things that Microsoft was trying to work out in the background, and information got out there, and they had to say, look, we're not ready to launch this thing just yet. But I'm curious as to why Phil Spencer just had it on his shelf, take a picture. Clearly he knew it was there. Right? It's not like he took a picture and then posted and was like, oh, I forgot to take the Xbox Keystone prototype down. So I do wonder if, well, one of two things. One, this is never coming out, and that's just a nice little piece of, I guess, memorabilia to have on his shelf. Or two, they're preparing to launch this thing maybe in the first half of next year. So a lot of questions around Phil Spencer and his shelves, as he likes to put all kinds of stuff on there. Remember, he teased the Xbox Series S well before it was announced, just on the bookshelf behind him in a Zoom call. So we'll see what happens here with Xbox Keystone, and if it is indeed this box, or again, maybe things have changed behind the scenes and they're not ready to reveal it yet, but maybe next year. Next up, let's stick with Game Pass for a second here, as we had some actual numbers get out there. If you're unaware, Microsoft doesn't really share a lot of detailed results for their different financial reports, specifically around the gaming division. They'll talk about revenue and kind of lump it all together. They won't talk about how many consoles have sold for the Xbox division, nothing like that. But because they're working to convince regulators all across the world that it would not monopolize the industry for them to buy Activision Blizzard, we're getting documents out of Brazil like this one here that appears to tell us the amount of revenue that Microsoft made from Game Pass in 2021, and it's marked here as $2.9 billion. It does say it's multiple game subscription services for consoles, but it seems that in the K documents it is focusing in on Game Pass for consoles. So this is not talking about like PC or anything there. And I don't know if this would include the Xbox Live games with Gold. I assume not, because Microsoft is really making a case for Game Pass, as that's what Sony has really honed in on here. But $2.9 billion from consoles in 2021. Microsoft obviously doing something way different than Sony or Nintendo when it comes to their big first-party games going into the service day one. They're working to prove that this subscription model works all the way around with all of your releases just going into it. And when you hear the number 2.9 billion, that's pretty good. And if you think about this as well, Starfield, Redfall, there's another Forza game coming up, and then you're going to see some big releases, I'm sure, from some of other Microsoft studios. They haven't even really gotten the ball rolling necessarily, at least not yet. So starting at 2.9 billion, you would assume at this time it's only up from here. So I think overall, this is a pretty good revenue report coming out of Cade in Brazil. But I have seen people just look at this and assume that the entire service is profitable. We obviously don't have enough information to definitively say that, but you do look at that and say, wow, $2.9 billion in just services through Game Pass for 2021. It's easy to look at that and just figure, okay, they're probably making some sort of money from it. At the very least, Phil Spencer has mentioned that Xbox Game Pass is sustainable, and maybe that's just the biggest thing right now is people are trying to figure out if this could be a legitimate future that everyone can get involved with. And yeah, that would include Sony and Nintendo. At this point, it's still Microsoft's job to show that this works, their vision of the future for gaming. And at this point, $2.9 billion in revenue, I'd say they started off pretty well. Oh, also, it's worth mentioning that the $2.9 billion is just for Game Pass subscriptions. That doesn't include money for games or anything else, accessories, consoles, and all of this. So if they continue to stack the subscription side of things with more and more revenue, it's going to get pretty interesting as we get further into the generation. Next up, let's talk about some big holiday sales that are currently going on. Amazon is doing like the Prime Day sales for the next, I think, 2 days. And I looked on the list. There were some games that were pretty good. Like the Uncharted Legacy of Thieves collection is $30. To me, that's not a bad pickup there for Uncharted 4 and Lost Legacy thrown together with enhancements around some of the visuals, especially if you haven't played something like Uncharted 4. But Nintendo has some of their first-party games on sale, and we all know when Nintendo puts some of their games on sale, specifically first-party ones, it's a big deal because they don't typically go on sale, but we can see this posted up over on the sales and deals page, this running until October 15th. But we do have Switch Sports marked to $40, Mario 3D World Bowser's Fury at $40, Yoshi's Crafted World at $40, Pokemon Snap at $40, and we also have Legend of Zelda Skyward Sword HD at $40 alongside of Hyrule Warriors Age of Calamity at the same price. They do have some of their amiibos on sale with Metroid Dread, the 2-pack at $25 and the Zelda and Loftwing at $20. If you want to check, I saw that the Pokemon games, specifically Brilliant Diamond and Shining Pearl, were marked down to $30 at participating retailers that included Amazon and Target, possibly for in-store pickup. That was going to run for, I believe, 48 hours, so double check to see if that is still available in your area, because those are pretty good Pokemon games. I enjoyed playing through Diamond, and having them half off there, not too bad. And I also noticed Ori and the Will of the Wisps, which is an awesome game. Until October 16th, it is 66% off on the Switch, making it about $10, which to me might be one of the best ways you can spend $10 right now in gaming. But looking at some of the titles here from Nintendo, again, they're first-party games. Them getting any kind of markdown from Nintendo themselves is a big deal. Mario 3D World plus Bowser's Fury, I think was a pretty good one. At $40, not a bad pickup there, especially kind of a new concept, an open world sort of concept for a Mario game there, but not too bad in terms of sales. And I assume as we get into November, and of course working towards Black Friday, we'll have all kinds of different discounts to take a look at. And in our last bit of news, let's talk about a massive breakthrough in the retro modding community for that original Xbox. There was an entire announcement yesterday. I was not expecting this because it looks like it's going to open up a world of possibilities for hardware released in 2001. Let's head over here. This is posted up over on the Make Megahertz website for Project Stellar. I had worked on an original Xbox using the Make Megahertz Xbox HD Plus. Essentially, it allowed me to install an HDMI port that pulled signal from the board and chips itself, bypassing that AV port on the back. And the original Xbox, if you have the right games that can put out that resolution, looks awesome still to this day. But this Project Stellar add-on looks like it's going to do some very impressive stuff. We can see it here. It has a micro SD slot, which will allow you to load different BIOS images. It's going to be using the LPC, which is like the debug pin set on the board in order to essentially communicate with the system and run some of this stuff. It even has a little OLED screen, which, by the way, love that idea. It has a postcode readout, so if there is an issue, I assume with any of the hardware that would be attached here on the system, you can at least get some sort of direction from that little OLED display, which I've worked with hard mods before, and one of the most frustrating things is if the system does not post or give you a signal and you have no idea why. So that's a great idea. We can see on the other side, they do have a dual ARM Cortex M0 Plus, which is a co-processor, FPGA plus RAM, the HD Plus link. So they're gonna have an interface with their Xbox HD Plus. All of this is gonna tie together and do some really impressive stuff, which leads us over to their Stellar OS. And while we just talked about the Stellar add-on, this is really what caught my eye. I mean, you can see I assume to be the screen you'll go to when you boot up here after whatever animation you have designed, but this is some impressive stuff. You get a lot of the information here on your system, but then even on the left, you have network devices, enhancements, system tools, input devices. You can check completely for updates from here through the network. And if you look at the different features that they'll have with this device, they'll have built-in tools for troubleshooting, configuration, hard drive setup, which is a big deal there for the Xbox. They will have ISO loading, compressed ISO loading, additional controller support. By the way, I saw this and I got really excited because the aftermarket original Xbox controller scene is pretty bad. Having the ability to sync up an Xbox One controller is incredible stuff. You can network load ISOs and virtual hard drive images. It'll have support for 64 megabyte, 128 megabyte, and 256 megabyte RAM configurations, which, again, for the community around homebrew for the original Xbox, it looks like the sky's the limit with this thing. It'll have native force for 480p with HD Plus fixes. You can have a boot animation in 720p. It'll have advanced fan control and a ton of other stuff. So this is looking to ship out and be available in November as they're sending them out to authorized retailers. And the OS itself will be in beta up until the end of January 2023. And it looks like they're going to have it paired with the Stellar Xbox HD Plus. This is going to be like the whole package. And they've essentially redesigned and simplified the installation process. I have a video of me installing the internal HDMI Xbox HD Plus, and it is one of those videos I'm sure 95% of people watch and go, that's cool, I'm never gonna try that. So if I can get this like entire kit, which I am planning to do a video around it, I'm hopeful that it is a bit easier for people to try out and do something really cool with their original Xbox hardware. So I'll be looking more into this Project Stellar with the Xbox HD Plus, and I'm thinking I'm just gonna get a completely stock original Xbox and we'll just install all this stuff into it and have some fun. So hopefully here in the next couple of months, we can follow up with an entire video showcasing this. And before we go to the comment of the day, we're gonna take a look at the poll that I posted up yesterday. We're asked, would you buy a streaming or remote play only Xbox system? 81% immediately said, no, I'm not interested in a streaming system. I get that for the audience here that I'm sure is very plugged in to the gaming industry. You're looking for that native experience out of a Series X or a Series S. But hey, 13% said it depends on the price. I saw a lot of $50 and $100 prices getting thrown around there. And then 6% just said, yes, I would pick one up. I think there'd be a place for this if the price is correct. $100 or less, I think you might have something there. And while I'm sure some of us might pick it up as a remote play device or just out of morbid curiosity, there could be people who pick it up and they're like, oh, okay, it's $100, has a controller, and I plug it in with my subscription and I can now just stream games, just outright. Some people may be okay with that. And if anything, it's just Microsoft working to lower the barrier of entry even further. So I'm curious if this does come to market and what they'll price it at. And we'll finish up with the comment of the day, as you're seeing here. This is from Silver saying, Jim Ryan going through all that effort to try and turn Brazil to their side only to see it backfire is honestly hysterical. I'm not even necessarily on Microsoft's side here, but Sony is just being petty at this point. Really, to me, what I gather here from Jim Ryan making the rounds, really pushing back on this, is just to try to get some sort of concession in the larger markets, the larger regulatory bodies and the EU, UK, and with the FTC and all these different things. And I don't believe that Jim Ryan thinks that him or Sony are going to be able to stop this acquisition from happening. I think Microsoft will get this deal done next year. But hey, will the FTC, for example, say, you know what, you have to put Call of Duty on PlayStation going forward for the next 10 years or something like that. And at that point, Sony will say, okay, that's the best we can do. And in the meantime, they're working to build some sort of answer to Call of Duty, whether that's one game or, let's be real, 5 games. I would like to think that this deal will actually work to make Sony more competitive, because you would assume a Sony that's losing Call of Duty and knows that that's happening would go back to the whiteboard, just erase everything off it, write Call of Duty and say, we need to beat this. How do we do it? And then all their talented studios come together and start building something. At least that's the hope. And ladies and gentlemen, that's going to do it here for Newswave. If you enjoyed this video, guys, hit that like button. If not, hit the dislike. Leave comments down below about everything we talked about here. Today was Phil Spencer just showing us a new Xbox console. Do you think that was by accident, or do you think it was on purpose and he has a plan going forward? And then also, what about Project Stellar? Are you interested in picking one of these up for your own Xbox? Thanks, guys, for watching, and I'll see you next time.